On October 23, 2077, Cooper Howard, a famous actor, performs stunts on horseback while his young daughter Janie assists. A nuclear bomb is then dropped on Los Angeles, forcing Cooper and Janie to leave on horseback. As they flee, several more bombs are dropped on the city. 219 years later, Vault 33 is successfully functioning under the leadership of Overseer Hank McLean. His daughter Lucy delivers her application for an approved marriage with a breeder from the adjoining Vault 32 to the governing council of Vault 33. The council is comprised of Woody Thomas, Betty Pearson, and Reg McPhee. Her application is approved, and her pregnant friend Steph helps her prepare for the wedding. The gatekeeper, Lucy's cousin Chet, stalls the process as he is in love with her. She reminds him of the negative effects of inbreeding, and he reluctantly opens the vault door. Lee Moldaver steps forward to introduce herself as the new overseer of Vault 32, also introducing Lucy's husband, Monty. Later, at the reception, Hank gives a toast and reports that the vault dwellers will be able to reclaim the surface within the next generation. Afterward, Lucy takes Monty to their room. Monty shows signs that he lacks education, unlike the dwellers of Vault 33. Meanwhile, Lucy's brother, Norm, enters Vault 32 and is alarmed to discover dead crops and a dead body, causing him to flee back. Lucy hears yelling outside and puts on her Pip-Boy to discover that Monty contains abnormally high radiation levels, confirming suspicions that the Vault 32 residents are raiders from the surface. Monty attacks Lucy and begins to strangle her before she cuts his throat. Outside, a bloody battle has broken out between the raiders and vault dwellers, claiming many lives on both sides. Woody manages to flee from the chaos while Steph is stabbed in the eye but manages to survive. Meanwhile, Chet closes the doors before any more raiders can attack. Lucy saves Norm from the chaos in the crop field and helps him hide in a storage unit. Meanwhile, at the door between the two vaults, Moldaver has taken multiple hostages, including Chet and Steph. She orders Hank to choose between saving them or Lucy. Just then, Hank locks Lucy in a closet. A raider tranquilizes him. Moldaver then tells Lucy that she resembles her mother. The raiders then drag Hank towards the real world and set the other hostages free before the bomb detonates. Later, Lucy proposes sending a team of 4 to the surface to look for Hank. The council rejects the idea and is unwilling to risk opening the vault door. Lucy resolves to leave alone and recruits Norm and Chet to help her escape undetected. They take an elevator up to the main vault door, and Chet tries to persuade Lucy to let him leave with her. She sticks him with a tranquilizer to prevent him from following her. Lucy then steps into the outside world, and the door closes behind her. Meanwhile, on a military base, Cleric Felix outlines the Brotherhood's mission to salvage and hoard pre-war technology. A massive airship suddenly arrives, and the class watches knights wearing T-60 power armor stroll into the base. While Maximus, an aspirant, is carrying out his daily tasks, Dane, his friend, calls out to him. They find the shed where the armor sets are stored, and Maximus recalls being rescued by a knight as a child. Later that evening, a group of aspirants are promoted, including Dane, who is assigned to serve as Knight Titus Squire. The next morning, Dane suffers a gruesome foot injury after someone places a razor in their boot. Maximus is blamed for the incident and dragged before his commanding officers. Elder Cleric Quintus questions Maximus, but he defends himself. Quintus informs Maximus that he will replace Dane as Titus' new squire. Later, he is anointed as a squire in a ceremony. Quintus announces the Brotherhood's newest mission to capture Siggy Wilzig, a rogue scientist. Elsewhere, a group of bounty hunters sneak into a fortress. Their leader, Honcho, explains that they are searching for a notorious bounty hunter. They find a grave with a pair of tubes emerging from the dirt. The other 2 hunters are shocked to realize the hunter they are looking for is a ghoul. The hunters dig up the coffin and an aged Cooper Howard emerges. Honcho proposes they work together to secure a large bounty, but he kills all the hunters before leaving. In a flashback, it is seen that Wilzig helps a female puppy in a research center. Over the years, Wilzig has specially trained the dog and cared for her while working on an unauthorized project. The fruit of the project is a small bead that Wilzig injects into his neck. One day, one of his co-workers discovers the project, but the dog kills him. Wilzig and her dog then flee the facility. In the present, Lucy wanders through the ruins and spends the night by a campfire. Sometime later, she's woken up when the dog approaches her and kills a nearby radroach. Lucy notices Wilzig sitting nearby. Wilzig urges Lucy to go home, doubting her ability to adapt to the dangerous and violent wasteland. Lucy asserts that she is not going back without her father, so Wilzig leaves with his dog. Meanwhile, Maximus and Titus land and trek through the wilderness to find their target. Soon, they reach a cave and find evidence that their targets were there. Titus orders Maximus to investigate the cave before being attacked by a monster. Titus attempts to flee, but it mauls him outside the cave. Titus screams at Maximus to help him, and he shoots the beast dead. Maximus removes the helmet off Titus, who orders him to patch him up while verbally abusing him. Tired of the mistreatment from him, Maximus does not follow orders. Titus warns him that he'll be executed for allowing Titus to die, but Maximus claims he'll be forgiven if he brings back the target. Maximus then puts on Titus' power armor, which grants him incredible strength. Meanwhile, Lucy walks through a marketplace and finds a store filled with items produced by Vault Tech. The shop owner, June, realizes Lucy is a vault dweller and laughs in her face. As Lucy leaves the store, Wilzig greets Majun. The ghoul interrupts and reports the large bounty on Wilzig's head. Majun reveals she's been paid to transport him, and the ghoul shoots Wilzig's foot off. Majun loudly offers a bounty on the ghoul. A shootout breaks out, but he manages to injure Majun and kill Wilzig's dog. Lucy runs into Majun's back room and inspects her ledger, finding a transaction with Moldaver's name recorded in it. Returning outside, Lucy attempts to de-escalate the conflict, but the ghoul aims his gun at her. At that moment, Maximus comes in and introduces him as Knight Titus and orders the ghoul to surrender. Lucy and Majun help Wilzig into the shop while Maximus engages the ghoul. Out of options, Majun asks Lucy to take Wilzig to her client, Moldaver. She then programs the coordinates into Lucy's Pip-Boy. Wilzig and Lucy flee the town as the fight outside gets heated. The ghoul ultimately exploits Maximus' unfamiliarity with the power armor to overwhelm him. The ghoul severs one of his tubes, causing the armor to malfunction and jet him away. Meanwhile, the ghoul takes pity on Wilzig's dog and heals her. After walking for some time, Lucy and Wilzig stop to rest. Lucy encourages him to press ahead, but he reveals that he's still valuable to Moldaver if Lucy can bring his head to her. He calls her Miss McLean, and Lucy asks how he knows her name, but he dies before answering. Lucy then prepares to cut his head off as he requests. After some time, the ghoul inspects Wilzig's headless corpse and starts coughing. He drinks a vial to ease his pain and starts walking. Meanwhile, Lucy inspects the head and notices a blue bead in the skin, which shocks her when she tries to touch it. She sticks a tracking chip in the head just in case. Meanwhile, the voice of an officer of the Brotherhood comes through the armor's radio and questions Knight Titus for missing his scheduled check-in. Impersonating Titus, Maximus reports having been attacked by a beast and claims his squire was killed in battle. The officer insists on sending a replacement, causing Maximus to panic and destroy the transmitter. He then leaves behind the armor to search for a mechanic to repair a damaged piece. Returning to the armor, Maximus finds scavengers trying to steal it. They beat him up and manage to open up the armor. Maximus quickly sticks his arm in the sleeve of the armor, using it to crush the head of one of the attackers. The others flee while Maximus sees a helicopter arrive with his new replacement squire. To his shock, his new squire is Thaddeus, his bully. Meanwhile, Lucy navigates Hollywood Boulevard, which has become a flooded lake. She has a tender moment feeding a fawn before it is suddenly dragged into the lake by a mutated gulper. The gulper also steals the head. Before she can try to retrieve it, the ghoul shows up and demands the head, but soon realizes the gulper got it. The ghoul ties Lucy to a pulley and repeatedly lowers and raises her. The bait successfully lures the gulper, and it attempts to swallow Lucy. She beats the monster with the ghoul's bag, and it eventually retreats. The ghoul opens his bag and realizes his supply of vials has been destroyed. Furious, he abandons the gulper and starts dragging Lucy away with him despite her insistence that they retrieve the head. In Vault 33, a meeting is held in the atrium to decide the fate of the imprisoned raiders. Woody Thomas suggests they educate and gradually integrate the raiders into Vault society, which most of the dwellers agree with. A suggestion does not sit well with Norm, who suggests they simply execute the prisoners. Just then, an engineer comes in, saying he has bad news to deliver. The engineer announces that the Vault's water supply will last for only 2 months. Steph, whose husband was killed by the raiders, quietly tells Norm that she agrees with his idea. Later, Maximus and Thaddeus track the ghoul to the lake. The gulper jumps from the water and attacks Maximus, but is wounded by a gunshot from Thaddeus. Angered, it attempts to swallow Thaddeus. Maximus pulls him out, causing the gulper to vomit its stomach contents. They see the dog licking the head nearby and celebrate their success. Meanwhile, the ghoul takes Lucy through the desert. Lucy sees a billboard showing Vault Boy giving a thumbs up, and the ghoul spitefully shoots a hole through the mascot's head. In the past, Cooper arrives on the set for a photo shoot. During the shoot, Cooper suggests he give a thumbs up, and one of the Vault Tech employees agrees, indicating that Vault Boy will be modeled after Cooper. Back in Vault 33, Chet is visited by Steph, and they bond over their shared trauma. She gives him some clothes that belong to her dead husband. Just then, Steph's water breaks and she goes into labor. Meanwhile, the ghoul takes Lucy to a mart and sells her to an unidentified voice in exchange for 2 months' worth of vials. Inside, Lucy is greeted by Snip Snip, a robot. It guides Lucy to a stretcher and cheerfully explains that he plans on harvesting her organs. Meanwhile, Norm brings dessert to the prisoners. He berates a raider for killing the people of Vault 32, but the raider insinuates that they were already dead when they arrived. Suspicious, Norm tries to access the Vault 32 record from his computer, but is denied. Soon, Chet and Norm sneak into Vault 32 to find their crop field, which has seemingly been dead for years. Investigating further, they find multiple vault dwellers dead from either suicide or violent murders. Norm discovers the words, "We know the truth," written on the wall in blood. On the other hand, Lucy breaks free and overloads the robot's circuits before escaping. Meanwhile, Norm accesses the Overseer's computer to look up vault door records. He discovers the door was opened from the outside with the Pip-Boy registered to his mother, Rose McLean. On the other hand, Lucy gives the ghoul medicine before venturing out. Out in the wild, Maximus and Thaddeus celebrate their successful retrieval of the head of Wilzig. Afterward, Maximus reveals his true identity to Thaddeus, which results in a scuffle. During this, Maximus crushes Thaddeus' foot and Thaddeus disables Maximus' power armor. Thaddeus then leaves Maximus stuck in the armor and flees with Wilzig's head. Hours later, Lucy discovers Maximus in the disabled power armor. After setting Maximus free, Lucy collapses due to her radiation poisoning. In Vault 32, Norm questions how the Raider got hold of his mom's Pip-Boy. At the door of Vault 31, the two discover the words, "We know what's in there," written in blood. Horrified by what they have seen, the two return to Vault 33. Meanwhile, Lucy awakens and sees Maximus covering up the armor and preparing to follow Thaddeus' trail. Lucy makes a deal with Maximus to let him help her track down the head with her Pip-Boy tracker, and in return, Maximus promises to bring Brotherhood reinforcements to save Lucy's dad. Back in Vault 33, the Overseer election commences. Betty wins the election with a 98% majority. Norm analyzes the Intervault trade records and discovers that all of Vault 33's former Overseers, including Betty and Hank, had been from Vault 31 as part of the trades. Norm meets up with Chet and discusses his suspicion, which Chet dismisses by saying that Vault 31 had a better education system. He then visits Steph's room, who's a former Vault 31 dweller, and asks what is different between the two vaults. She responds that Vault 31 had better mashed potatoes, to which Norm replied that it was the same response Hank had said. Later, Lucy and Maximus arrive at Shady Sands, where Lucy is shocked to see the crater that is the only remnant of the city. Lucy wonders if anyone has survived, and Maximus reveals that he is a survivor of the destruction. Soon, they arrive at a building of Hawthorne Medical Laboratories. They are soon trapped in a room and gassed. In Vault 33, Betty makes her first order to transfer a number of the vault's population to Vault 32 as a resettling campaign. She leads the residents on a tour through the refurbished Vault 32. Norm commends Betty on the cleanup and asks what happened to his mom's Pip-Boy after her death. Betty replies that it was buried with her and that she and Hank were the ones who buried her themselves. Elsewhere, Lucy and Maximus wake up in Vault 4. Sometime before the Great War, Cooper is introduced to Bud Askins, who tells him that the ultimate weapon to crush competition is time, and the future of humanity is dependent on one word: management. A displeased Cooper leaves the conversation to join his wife, Barb. In the present, the ghoul wakes up and a group of men dressed as sheriffs enter the building. Sheriff Troy then knocks the ghoul out. In Vault 4, Lucy speaks to Birdie through the glass, thanking her for taking them in. Birdie suggests that they stay for a few days to recover. Once out of quarantine, Lucy and Maximus eat in the atrium. Lucy is relieved to be among Vault dwellers again, while Maximus is suspicious of their cult-like behavior. Birdie introduces them to Overseer Benjamin. He brightly welcomes them to the vault and outlines the rules, including that level 12 is off limits. In the past, Cooper entertains the idea of him and his wife quitting their jobs and moving to a ranch, but she laughs off the idea. Cooper is dismayed when she puts on a Pip-Boy around the house and suggests she quit Vault Tech. But she says the job assures them that they'll be placed in one of the good vaults, confusing Cooper. Later, he meets Charlie, a friend from the military, and voices his disgust at Charlie attending communist meetings. But Charlie claims that Vault Tech is evil. He then gives Cooper the business card of a place where his meetings are held and encourages him to come. In the present, Maximus attempts to steal a fusion core for his armor when Birdie catches him. She assigns him to a room and gives him a Pip-Boy of his own. Meanwhile, the ghoul meets the president, his former associate Sorrel Booker. Sorrel speculates that his old friend continues living to look for his wife. The ghoul changes the subject and brings up Moldiver. Sorrel claims that he and his gang are trying to bring order to the wasteland. The ghoul then kills the sheriffs, annoying Sorrel. He removes a wanted poster of Moldiver from the wall and asks Sorrel why he has it. The ghoul notes that Moldiver has changed since he knew her. In the past, Cooper drives to the scheduled meeting. Charlie welcomes him to the meeting and acquaints Cooper with the main speaker, who is revealed to be Moldiver, then known as Miss Williams. In Vault 4's atrium, the surface refugees remove their Pip-Boys as the ritual begins. They begin chanting about a flame mother, and a portrait of Moldiver is unveiled, and they bow down to her. Just then, Lucy takes an elevator to level 12, which houses a laboratory. She finds several pods containing pregnant women. The lights illuminate, causing Lucy to hide from the doctor. While she hides, the doctor activates an alarm. Just as he catches her, she throws acid in his face. Several residents come in and restrain Lucy as she yells for help. Meanwhile, Maximus happily enjoys watching a video of a waterfall in his room. Back before the Great War, Miss Williams claims that the people in power are the real enemy, and Cooper starts to walk out. She stops him and claims she knows his wife's evil side as well. After the meeting, Moldaver privately meets with Cooper to tell him that her research division, which is working towards developing unlimited energy through cold fusion, was acquired by Barb's division. Since then, Vault-Tec has done nothing to further the project, even though it could end the American War. Moldaver asks Cooper for his help getting the project back and gives him a listening device. In the present, Birdie and Benjamin berate Lucy for trespassing. They play a tape showing Vault-4's origins. Lloyd and Cassandra Hawthorne experimented on hybridizing human test subjects but failed badly. The laboratory is now used to treat patients still suffering from the original experiments. Despite Lucy's apology, Birdie tells her that she still must be punished. They place a bag over her head and drag her outside. Maximus sees Lucy and resolves to help her. Meanwhile, Thaddeus arrives at an abandoned gas station and rests to look over his foot. He locks Cooper's dog in a dispenser to prevent her from following him and leaves to search for a radio station. On the other hand, Lucy is sentenced to exile. She is additionally gifted 2 weeks of supplies to give her a fighting chance for survival. At the same time, Maximus steals the Vault's fusion core and begins attacking the residents before Lucy explains that they're letting her go. They return to the surface and Lucy asks Maximus to return the fusion core, as without it, the Vault will only last a few days. Maximus then confesses his real name to Lucy, and that he acquired the armor by allowing the real Knight to die. She forgives him and invites him to live in Vault 33 after they rescue her father. Meanwhile, Thaddeus meets an oil salesman who offers to treat his wound. Thaddeus agrees to exchange Maximus's fusion core for the treatment. The salesman gives him a serum that fully heals his foot in a matter of seconds. He provides directions to a radio station near Shady Sands. On the other hand, the ghoul tracks the head to the station and frees the dog. Meanwhile, Thaddeus reaches the radio station and calls for assistance. When Lucy and Maximus arrive, Thaddeus shoots at them, but his shots hit nothing. Lucy attempts to negotiate, but Thaddeus steps into one of the traps. Surprising everyone, he does not die. He pulls the arrow out, and the holes in his neck heal up. Maximus says that Thaddeus is becoming a ghoul, a side effect of the healing serum. Soon, 3 helicopters approach the location, and Thaddeus realizes that the Brotherhood will kill him if his condition is discovered. Maximus takes the head and allows Thaddeus to run away. Maximus then disfigures the severed head of a corpse. He instructs Lucy to take the real head while he uses the other one as a decoy for the Brotherhood. Meanwhile, a ceremony is held for the new transfers to Vault 32. Betty names Steph as acting overseer of Vault 32, and the transfers officially move out. While Betty is distracted, Norn uses her computer to communicate with the overseer of Vault 31. He reports that the mission is failing, and the other overseer instructs Betty to return to Vault 31 immediately. After a short wait, the vault door opens and he enters. On the other hand, Maximus is presented before Elder Cleric Quintus, who quickly discovers that the head does not contain the artifact. Maximus is promptly sentenced to death. He is spared after Dane pleads for his life, admitting that they injured themselves. Afterward, Quintus privately confides in Maximus about his displeasure towards the Brotherhood, believing the organization to have lost its way. He sees the artifact as an opportunity to reshape the Brotherhood in his vision and invites him to personally join him at his side. Meanwhile, Lucy reaches Moldaver's location and is brought to her. In the control room, Hank is imprisoned in a cage as Moldaver awaits Lucy at a dinner table alongside a female ghoul. Having finally received the head, Moldaver uses a tool to remove the artifact from it. Lucy demands that her father be released, but Moldaver instead reveals the truth about her father's past. Hank is one of numerous Vault-Tec executives who have been cryogenically frozen in Vault 31, each one periodically unfrozen to oversee and indoctrinate Vault 32 and Vault 33 in a bid to preserve Vault-Tec's authority. Simultaneously, Norm ventures deeper into Vault 31 and discovers it is controlled by Bud Eskins, who is now a Roomba. He also finds a list of Vault 31's residents, including many other names, including Steph. Elsewhere, the ghoul continues toward Moldaver, and a flashback shows him driving Barb to the Vault-Tec headquarters. Cooper then decides to follow Barb into the headquarters building when he finds that the signal is too faint for him to hear from outside. A landmark meeting led by Buttaskins occurs between prominent corporations including Robco Industries, Westtech, Big MT, and Repcon in discussion of potential collaboration with Vault-Tec. The meeting descends into bickering over Vault-Tec's methods. Barb mediates by proposing that of the more than 100 vaults across the country, each corporation be given its own vaults for experimentation. She concludes by suggesting that they can stage a nuclear conflict themselves to ensure a return on investments. Shocked by his wife's words, Cooper barely remembers meeting a young Henry Hank McLean. In the present, Moldaver reveals that she had worked closely with Lucy's mother, Rose McLean. Rose left Vault 33 after growing suspicious of Hank's past and believing that civilization could rebuild itself on the surface. Rose discovered Shady Sands, where she raised her children before Hank returned to her, took Lucy and Norm back, and destroyed Shady Sands using a nuclear warhead. Rose survived, becoming the feral ghoul sitting at the table, while Moldaver continued her research on cold fusion and became fixated on the artifact. With the artifact now in her possession, she only needs the proprietary authorization codes from a Vault Tech executive. Lucy begs her father to give Moldaver the codes, to which Hank hesitantly obliges. Moldaver uses the artifact to begin priming a makeshift cold fusion reactor. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood mounts an all-out aerial offensive against Moldaver, moving towards the building despite suffering some casualties. Maximus and Dane part ways, with Maximus' squad heading into the observatory. The Ghoul reaches the observatory during the battle's climax, ambushing Maximus' squad inside the building. Maximus narrowly escapes, reaching Lucy before freeing Hank, who steals a suit. Lucy reveals Hank's destruction of Shady Sands to Maximus. In a fit of rage, Maximus attacks Hank, only to be quickly struck down. He remains unresponsive despite Lucy's desperate attempts to revive him. Lucy holds Hank at gunpoint before the Ghoul arrives and wounds him. He demands to know where Barb and his daughter Janie are, but Hank just runs away instead. The Ghoul offers Lucy a choice: stay and be killed by the Brotherhood, or travel with him to find Barb. She executes the Ghoul Rose before accepting his invitation, leaving Maximus behind. Sometime later, Maximus awakens and a gravely wounded Moldaver activates the reactor, returning power to the ruins of the city. Moldaver asks Maximus to think about what the Brotherhood would do with such power, before succumbing to her wounds. Dane enters, believing Maximus to have killed her. Maximus denies it, yet Dane proclaims him a knight to a cheering crowd of Brotherhood soldiers. Afterward, the Ghoul reunites with his dog outside, and the trio begins leaving in pursuit of Hank. On the other hand, a defeated Hank arrives in the Mojave wasteland and sees New Vegas in the distance.